On yesterday's edition of Halford and Brough in the Morning on Sportsnet 650 here in Vancouver, they had Frank Seravalli on as a guest. I'll leave a link in the description if you want to listen to this audio hit. It's from the Sportsnet website. What's the likelihood of an EP40 trade this season? And, quite self-explanatorily, the hosts on the program, plus Frank Seravalli, they talk about the idea of Elias Pettersson getting traded, and they primarily talk about the Detroit Red Wings as a destination. Stick around in this commentary, let's discuss the idea. It's not a new one, I would say. We've gone over the idea of Elias Pettersson to Detroit in the past, but this time there is a little bit more urgency, I would say. Mostly due to the fact that the Vancouver Canucks are in a much more volatile spot. This is a team that is last in the league by a pretty big margin. They're 4 points back of second last place. That's terrible. And the Vancouver Canucks, for what it's worth, are looking at a rebuild. You had some moments, some interviews done with Jim Rutherford about rebuilding and restarting everything, maybe not tearing it down to the studs, but just kind of letting the youth ride in. And with conversations starting out that the Vancouver Canucks are now going to listen to offers on everybody on their team, nobody is untouchable, it seems. Naturally, Elias Pettersson's name has entered the mix, and it seems like, based off of what Frank Seravalli said on the program, there are teams asking about Petey. It is a realistic idea at this point. Now, as for the Detroit Red Wings, Brough brought up on the radio program that, hey, the Canucks and the Wings have already had discussions about trades this season because the Red Wings were in on Quinn Hughes. And Seravalli brought up, the Wings have already made a trade that was significant with the Vancouver Canucks in the Filip Hronek deal. So already there is some history between these GMs, Patrick Allvin and Stevie Y. Although you could say maybe Steve Yzerman was negotiating for Quinn Hughes with Jim Rutherford rather than Patrick Allvin. But is there an opportunity for these guys to tango one more time? I really like the idea of Elias Pettersson with the Detroit Red Wings. If you just remove the dollar amount, remove the cap shenanigans, remove whatever the trade price would be, and you just think of Petey the guy playing for Detroit as a second-line center behind Dylan Larkin, maybe Pettersson will finally start scoring again. In fact, not even maybe. He will. If this guy is playing with Alex DeBrincat and Patrick Kane, he's going to get himself a ton more points. He's playing with Linus Karlsson and Evander Kane with the Vancouver Canucks. Linus Karlsson was an AHL guy last year. Evander Kane sucks. Jake DeBrusk and Brock Besser can't find the back of the net to save their lives this season. And Connor Garland is reasonably good, but he's not scoring either. Vancouver is not equipping Elias Pettersson with the necessary pieces around him to succeed, even though Pettersson has been Vancouver's best forward as of late. It's not even a debate. He's been the most productive guy ever since the turn of the calendar, and he still is only at 6 points in his last 10 games. He hasn't produced a lot, but compared to every other Vancouver Canuck, oh boy, it's a lot. Pettersson has found an element to his game that I think is stable at this point. He is not a superstar game-breaking guy. He's not a 100-point player right now. But it seems like, based off of all the information we're hearing, the Vancouver Canucks are willing to trade Pettersson despite knowing in their hearts that he is going to bounce back and be a better player elsewhere. And it seems like the value of Pettersson on the market is not going to be significantly reduced because other teams might be feeling that same way too. They're seeing Petey saying, hey, okay, he's actually doing well, but look at his line mate. He's playing with Linus Karlsson. I mean, if he plays with Patrick Kane, he probably plays better. Does he not? He probably scores more points. He's doing a lot of little things right, and I get it. Little things for 11.6 is not the best, but as Frank Seravalli said on yesterday's Halford Brough, we're getting to a point now with all these other contracts that are being signed, contract demands out of players like Alex Tuch, Kyle Connor is making 12, Kaprizov's making 17. It's getting to a point now where all of a sudden 11.6 doesn't seem like the worst thing in the world for a player like Elias Pettersson anymore. Maybe before the season began, before all of these shenanigans with the cap rising and contracts getting inflated and all this stuff started happening, before guys like Luke Hughes started getting $9 million a year, before all of that, I was like, okay, well, Elias Pettersson's making 11.6, and he had 45 points. That's not good. That's a really bad contract. Now it's like, all right, it's not that bad. He's playing better, he's scoring more, he's on a terrible team, and 11.6 isn't the end of the world anymore. So there seems to be a more opened trade market for this guy, and an understanding between most of these teams that Pettersson is likely to start producing and succeeding more if he leaves Vancouver. Therefore, the Canucks might not actually get fleeced here if they end up trading Petey away and he ends up becoming a 100-point player again alongside of Kane and DeBrincat or whatever. Which brings us as to what exactly the trade could look like. Now, Vancouver would not be getting Simon Edvinsson in return. I think we've already established that. Now, there is a little bit of a difference here. Obviously, if Vancouver gets Pettersson for Edvinsson, that would leave a big hole on Detroit's left side. I would have to think that Axel Sandin-Pellikka is the immediate centerpiece of the trade that makes it work for Vancouver, plus maybe another center coming back just to even up the roster spots. Man, it's hard to do that, right? Like, you don't give up a Cop, you don't give up a Comfort, because Vancouver doesn't want those kinds of guys. It would have to be a Casper or a Danielson, or dare I say both. Okay, it's probably just going to be one. Let's be real here. If we're thinking ASP, we're thinking Danielson, we're thinking another first-round pick or something like that, I honestly start to think about it a lot more. Yeah, it's cheaper than what Quinn Hughes was supposedly going for, but then again, Quinn Hughes has more value. Elias Pettersson, also with the fact that he is signed till the end of 2032, making $11.6 million a year, that does change the value a little bit compared to Quinn Hughes, who only has one more year left on the deal. If you are confident that EP40 can bounce back, that his Datsukian-style play would translate well onto the center position of a DeBrincat or Kane line, then maybe you toss in another draft pick, a third or something, just to sweeten the pot a little bit. You can compare Elias Pettersson trade talk to some other centers who had gotten moved, like Jack Eichel, for example, but you're not going to get the exact same valuation because Jack Eichel had a surgery that he needed to get, and there wasn't really that much clearance for him to go and get it, and there wasn't really a guarantee that he would ever be able to play hockey properly ever again. Elias Pettersson's not going through it that bad. He doesn't have to get life-changing surgery. He's just playing worse than before. And there is a big part of me that thinks, if Pettersson's going to a team that has a whole bunch of other Swedes, Vancouver's got some Swedes, of course, but Vancouver, Detroit, lots of Swedes on either of these teams. If Pettersson forms some sort of a connection with Johansson, Edvinsson, Sandin-Pellikka, Raymond, you could have a really nice power play unit with 3 defensemen for whatever reason you'd want to go out there and do that. Obviously, I'm joking, but Pettersson and Raymond, 2 Olympic Swedes alongside of each other in the National Hockey League. That sounds like a pretty good idea in my mind. You can let me know your thoughts, what you think about the idea of an Elias Pettersson trade over to Detroit. I'm engagement farming here. Halford and Brough really did talk about it with Seravalli, and I like the idea a lot for both sides, as long as Vancouver doesn't get fleeced. You can let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. How do you feel about EP40 in Motown? I hope you enjoyed this video. Saying 9 and bye.